The sun had barely risen over the dry ridges when Luke Carver rode through the edge of the desert, his hat low, his eyes tired, and his horse the only companion left in a life that had forgotten him. The drought had burned everything he owned, and the war between settlers and tribes had made enemies of everyone who once traded in peace. He was hungry, broke, and one sandstorm away from being another forgotten soul buried beneath the golden dust of Arizona. But even in those hollow days, Luke still had his horse, Dusty, a creature he'd raised from a colt, fed with his own hands, and trusted with his life. To Luke, that horse wasn't an animal. It was his last piece of family. That morning, as he followed the dry creek bed toward the hills, something broke the rhythm of the desert wind. A faint sound, a groan, a cough, echoed through the stillness. He reined in Dusty and listened again. There it was, someone in pain. Luke slid off the saddle and followed the sound until he spotted her. A woman lying behind a cluster of rocks, her dress torn, her dark hair tangled with dust and blood. She was Apache. He could tell from the beaded necklace around her neck and the moccasins on her feet. Her arm was badly wounded, and one leg seemed twisted, as if she had fallen hard. For a long moment Luke stood frozen. He knew what it meant to help an Apache. Many cowboys had been found dead for far less. The war between settlers and the Apache had left scars on both sides. But when she opened her eyes, weak, frightened, yet still proud, he couldn't turn away. "You'll die here," he said quietly, kneeling beside her. She didn't understand his words, but she understood his tone. He tore a piece of his shirt, wrapped her bleeding arm, and gave her the last of his water. When the sun began to set, her strength faded fast. The mountains were far, the desert cruel, and night would kill her before her tribe could find her. Luke looked at Dusty, his loyal horse tied nearby. The horse looked back at him as if understanding what was coming. Luke sighed deeply, brushing Dusty's mane. "You've carried me through hell, old friend," he whispered. "Now it's your turn to carry her home." He lifted the woman carefully and placed her on Dusty's back. Securing her with his rope and canteen, he patted Dusty's neck and whispered something only the horse could hear. Then, with a firm slap, he sent Dusty off toward the canyon trails, where the Apache lands began. He stood there long after the horse disappeared into the fading sunlight, the desert wind howling like a ghost. When night fell, Luke lit a small fire and stared into it. Alone, his heart heavy but oddly peaceful, he didn't know if the woman would live or if Dusty would ever find her people. He only knew one thing: kindness, even in the harshest land, still mattered. The next morning was silent, too silent. Luke awoke to the chill of dawn and the strange feeling that the desert was holding its breath. He stirred his fire back to life and prepared to walk the long trail back toward town. Without Dusty, every step felt heavier. His boots sank into the sand as the sun climbed higher, and for the first time, he felt truly alone. Then he heard it, a deep rumble, faint at first, like distant thunder. It grew louder, rolling closer across the plain. Luke turned, squinting toward the horizon. Dust clouds rose in the distance, riders, a lot of them. The sun glinted off spear tips and painted feathers. His chest tightened. He knew instantly who they were. The Apache. 70 warriors strong, riding in formation, their faces painted in red and black. Luke froze where he stood. He had no horse, no gun in hand, nothing but the wide desert behind him. They came fast, the sound of hooves shaking the ground. When they surrounded him, the air was thick with dust and tension. Not a word was spoken. Luke's hand hovered near his belt, though he knew it was useless. The warriors formed a circle, silent as the grave. Then one of them stepped forward, a tall man with a wolf pelt across his shoulders and scars across his chest. The chief. His eyes burned with the kind of strength that came from generations of battle. Luke held his ground. "If you're gonna kill me," he said quietly, "do it quick." The chief didn't answer. Instead, he turned his head, and the circle of warriors parted. Out from behind them came Dusty, his horse, alive, unharmed, and carrying the same Apache woman he had saved. She sat tall now, her arm wrapped in new bandages. her expression calm, but filled with something Luke had never seen before: gratitude. The chief raised his hand. The warriors dismounted one by one and placed their spears in the sand, their heads bowed. Luke's eyes widened. He didn't understand. The woman spoke softly in her native tongue, then dismounted and walked to him. She placed her hand over his heart, then pointed toward the sky. The chief stepped forward and spoke in broken English. "You gave your spirit horse to save her life. We do not forget." The warriors began to chant, a low, rhythmic sound that echoed through the canyons. It wasn't a chant of war, it was honor. They circled Luke once more, this time in peace, their voices rising with the wind. When the chanting stopped, the chief pointed toward the horizon and said, "From this day you walk under Apache protection. You are brother to our people." Dusty walked to Luke, nuzzling his shoulder, and Luke could feel the tears stinging his eyes. The chief and his warriors mounted their horses, raising their feathers to the sky before turning toward the mountains. The woman gave Luke one last look, soft, grateful, and rode away with them, her dark hair flowing behind her like a ribbon of shadow in the sun. When the dust finally settled, Luke stood there beside his horse, still trying to believe what had just happened. 70 Apache warriors had ridden to his fire, not for vengeance but for honor. In the middle of that endless desert, he realized something. Greater than fear, respect could bridge even the deepest divides. He looked at Dusty and smiled faintly. "Guess we both found our way home, partner." With the sun blazing above and the wind whispering through the plains, Luke mounted up and rode east, the horizon wide open before him. And as his figure grew small against the golden desert, the echo of that chant seemed to follow him, a reminder that even one act of kindness can move mountains and heal old wounds. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful Western tales of courage, kindness, and destiny. Every story we share reminds us, one good deed can change the world. Hit that bell icon and ride with us into the next adventure.